All right. Well, welcome everyone to, we get to be, I think, the second Montana MCCE UnSummit session. We're going to be presenting a K-2 Appy Hour. And so what we'll kind of be chatting about are some of our favorite apps and websites that we use with little learners in our classroom. So we're happy that you're here joining us. My name is Traci Piltz. I am a technology integration specialist in Billings Public Schools. I am a former kindergarten teacher. And so I work mostly with our kindergarten first and second grade students and teachers in here in Billings. And so anyway, just happy to be here sharing some of our favorites with you. I will kind of point out there's a bit.ly on our slide deck here that takes you to a website. Nikki and I had presented this topic at MCCE in Seattle, like days before the COVID, like literally days before we were in Seattle. And we had a wonderful time. I'm so glad that we were able to do it. But we did this presentation there. And so we just kind of kept those same resources. So when you go to that bit.ly, you'll see an agenda and some things that were actually from that MCCE section. But there are some good resources on that website. So just to point that out. And then I'll let Nikki go ahead and introduce herself.
Yeah, hi, I see some familiar names and faces from my session this morning, so thank you for coming back and listening to me talk a little bit more. My name is Nikki and I work at Montana PBS. I'm the Director of Education here. My role is mostly to support teachers. I offer professional development and technology coaching for teachers in rural areas. Before I was teaching though, before I was working here, I was teaching. I taught for 16 years, mostly in the primary classroom. I met Traci on Twitter in Montana EdChat, and we were both teaching kindergarten and using iPads and flexible seating, which were like mind-blowing brand new things at that time in our buildings. And nobody else in my building was doing anything like that. And so I found a like-minded peer in Traci. And so we've been collaborating and working together ever since, which is super fun.
It is super fun.
So one of the things we taught when Traci and I first started using technology in our classrooms, we got some pushback about this thing called screen time, this like thing that we think we shouldn't be doing, but something we just can't avoid. And if you had the pleasure of being on when we were first getting started, we were both lamenting that our children have had a lot of screen time while we're on these webinars. And some of it good and some of it not, and some of it more embarrassing. But one of the things that we've tried to talk to teachers about is to sort of take away the negativity behind screen time and technology use with our little ones. And obviously we want them playing with Play-Doh and, you know, writing on sticky notes. I just happen to have props all over my desk, so it's well timed. We want them to do all of those things, but there's so many opportunities for digital tools to give kids opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. And so we have this framework to think about when you look at integrating media and digital tools with little kids. And we're going to go through each of these 6 things today and talk a little bit more in depth about what kind of tools and teaching strategies and activities you might use in your classroom that would help you do all of these things. So we can spark an interest in something, we can model something that we couldn't do otherwise, we can explore the bottom of the ocean and the moon using technology that we couldn't do. We can create amazing things in addition to the things that we can create with pencils and papers and glue and glitter. We can document all that cool stuff they build with linking cubes and Play-Doh. We can document that kind of learning using digital tools. And the most powerful of it all is sharing, taking what we do in the classroom and kicking down those walls and sharing our work with a greater audience, a more authentic audience. So we're going to go through each of those, and the first one is spark. So we can use digital tools to spark curiosity and really get kids thinking about something or looking at something they might not have an experience with. And so if you were with me this morning, I talked about Wonderopolis and how I use the wonder of the day to spark curiosity and wonder in my classroom. This was a morning routine that began with just an image projected on our board. The kids came in and they opened a spiral notebook that I got at Staples for 11 cents during back to school time. And each kid had their name on it, and that's how they knew they were where they were supposed to sit in the morning, because that's where their wonder notebook was. They opened it to a blank sheet. They were supposed to look at the board and just start drawing and writing with their ideas. Some of them just drew their own version of what the image was, and then had conversations about it. And then we came to the rug and we did some turn and talk to talk more about the image. And then I would show the Wonderopolis website. We'd watch the little video and talk about the big question that were associated with the image. And sometimes this image, this wonder was related to something else we were going to talk about later that day in science or social studies. For instance, if we were doing an electricity unit, the wonder might be about lightning or about light bulbs or something. The beautiful thing about Wonderopolis is that I could search for any topic and usually find a wonder that was semi-related. But I also tried to go random from time to time too, because you never know what kind of curiosity you're going to ignite in a kid by exposing them to a new topic. And that might lead them to a book they want to read, or to an activity they want to do, or something they might want to research or study. So I would try to balance having a wonder that we could discuss that was curricular tied as well as just sort of random and out there. And I could make the wonder of the day last 10 minutes or 30 minutes. It just depended on how long we wanted it to go. But it was a great way to start the day, was to use this digital platform, this really easy, free resource to get kids talking and thinking about all the things in the world that there are to wonder about. Well, this was mine too. Another great new program we have on PBS Kids is just came out last November, and it's called Xavier, Riddle, and the Secret Museum. I have more props. It is based on this series of books, which is Extraordinary People Change the World. And Brad Meltzer and Christopher Iliopoulos created these books and this series to help kids find heroes in our historical figures. Brad Meltzer was a little discouraged that his kids were idolizing YouTube influencers and not famous historical figures. And he realized it because those influencers were talking to kids in their language and speaking to the kids in such a way that was much more interesting than a history textbook. So they created this series of books so that the characters, we see these characters when they're children, and we learn about the things that they were interested in when they were children, and how those interests and passions led them to go on to do great things. And it's all about exploring character traits. So Xavier Riddle and his friends in the show use a time machine to go back in time and meet Amelia Earhart when she was a kid. And they learn all about the character traits that made Amelia Earhart persevere and to work hard and to do what she did. So going along with the show and the books, we have a couple of games and activities that go with it. So there's this game on pbskids.org called the Hero Maker, and they can use that game to make their own hero and give it clothes and think about the traits that make that little character a hero. There's also an entire collection of teaching resources on PBS Learning Media associated with some of the books. So you could watch a video of the characters meeting the character, read the book together, and then print off this lovely little take-home book that the kids can color and write in facts that they learned about Xavier Riddle and the historical figures that they're meeting. So it's a great way to introduce kids to both character traits and history. I think it's your turn, right?
Yeah. So the third, I guess, little title on that framework is Explore, and just giving kids opportunities really to explore, investigate, and learn this pairs really well with if you've done any project-based learning or heard of any project-based learning, letting students pick things that they're interested in learning about and then giving them ways to explore and learn more about those things kind of independently and on their own. So we tried to highlight a few of our favorite apps and websites for letting students explore. One that we used a ton in my classroom is Epic. And Epic is tons and tons of free books for kids. They've just kept adding more and more. So there's really quality titles in the Epic books. You can find literature, narrative books. You can also find lots of factual books, so informational text. You can also make sure that students are just searching for books that can be read to them. So if you have students who are pre-readers, they can do the read to me books. And then there's also tons of videos available where they can find facts and information through the videos. So Epic is a free resource. You can sign up for a free account as a teacher. You can use it through the website, or if you have mobile devices, you can use the app in your classroom. Up until the COVID closures, you actually had to pay to use it at home. Now they have kind of a new option where kids can access it at home, I think for like up to 2 hours a day or something for free. So it's even a nice resource to share now with parents because students can access that from home. Kiddle we put on there, that's a website and it's a search engine, but it's a visual search engine. So if I were having my students research a topic, we have an example here about penguins. So whether they're all researching the same thing, or maybe I say, all of you, we're going to choose an Arctic animal and each of you is going to research a different Arctic animal. I would want to give them, I wouldn't just say like, okay, like Google it and find out what you can about penguins. We would want to give them a list of places where they could safely search and find those research on those topics. And so Kiddle is one of my favorites because it's kind of like Google, but it's visual and it's filtered. So students can go to Kiddle and they can put in the topic that they want to find some information about and then easily search. Again, just sort of how we would do a Google search, but knowing that it's more visual for students who aren't quite reading yet. And then also is filtered for students. So that's a great website. The other things that we put on here, as we're asking students to share what they've learned, something that I guess has been more prevalent lately, I guess, as I've been thinking about this process, is just being careful about really teaching students the importance of using images and videos and that type of thing that are free for them to use. They're not subject to copyright. I think we've done such a great job of talking to kids about plagiarism, and they know not to copy words, but we don't always realize that that also goes along with the images that they're using. So we might have them do this penguin research, but if we let them just, go on a website and start grabbing images of penguins to put into their project, we're not doing our due diligence and sort of teaching them how to be good digital citizens as far as, using free, fair use images. And so both that Pix for Learning, and then we also put Adobe on there. Those are great places for kids to be able to find those images. And so we'll press play in just a second on this little example, but this project that these students did, these were first graders. We spent time learning about penguins using these different research tools, and then they used an app called Apple Clips, which is a free app, a video making tool to put together these videos. And we made sure that the images, that they used were from Pix for Learning and So we knew that those were images that were free for the students to use. And again, these were first graders, and we were able to have these conversations with them about, you know, we have to use things that are okay to share. We can't just grab other people's work off of the computer. And so we were able to have those digital citizenship conversations with the first graders. Now for this project, we didn't just say, go to Pix for Learning and choose. We actually narrowed it down a little bit, because you know that when you give students like an open-ended, you know, pick a sticker or whatever, they could be stuck doing that for like the next 3 hours of their life. So we went through and picked, you know, maybe 5 images of penguins and then said they could pick 2 from there. But we did have some good conversations. And then you'll also notice in her video, some of it was created by the students as well. And so I think encouraging them to use original artwork, either, you know, created on paper and we take a picture of it, or created digitally, and talk about the power of their own creation, and that own original artwork is really powerful too. So Nikki, if you want to just play that quick example.
Penguins are different kinds of species. I know that penguins eat fish. I know that penguins do not fight. Do you like penguins?
Awesome.
So again, just kind of empowering students to, you know, do all the research and then sort of compile that after they've explored that topic, and then be able to share that in like a really creative and unique way. Is this still me?
Yes, you get the next few.
Hey. So speaking of create, the next item on that framework is creating. And to me, this is one of the most powerful words, I guess, or pieces of this process. I think, you know, oftentimes when we think about technology in our classroom and with little students, it's often, you know, handing them an iPad, kind of like what our daughters are doing right now to keep them busy while we're on these webinars. But, you know, they have a device in front of them and they're just kind of like watching something, or maybe clicking through a game. Like we've got, you know, certain programs that we have to have them do for this many minutes a day. And I think sometimes we get so stuck on that part that we aren't giving them those open-ended opportunities to make things with the iPad and create. And I feel like that speaks a lot to that part that Nikki mentioned at the beginning about, you know, the screen time. We have to be mindful of that screen time, but at the same time, I think there's a difference between, you know, them having an iPad in front of them and they've just zoned out watching YouTube for hours, or them using that iPad as a tool where they're, you know, maybe creating something or taking pictures of things or making videos. To me, those are different types of screen time, because they're really engaged and they're using it for meaningful purposes. There's a couple of examples on here that we can look at. And then there's also at the top there, a link to a Wakelet collection. Those are a bunch of other creation apps. We had a really hard time. Our idea for this Appy Hour was sort of narrowing down some of our favorites, but at times we had a hard time really selecting. That creation apps Wakelet is sort of crowdsourced. A teacher I know on Twitter had sort of put out, what are your favorite creation apps for young learners? And so it was teachers from all over the country and world really kind of contributing their ideas. And then I just compiled all of those into this list. And it was actually really cool to see, you know, again, this is Twitter, so it's people from all over, but you notice the same apps coming up again and again. And so you know that those are really good, quality, wonderful apps that you can use in your classroom. So I'll remind you to that bit.ly that we gave you, and we'll show it to you again. These slides are embedded on there, and then you'll be able to click on these links that we've included. So you can grab that off of the website that we shared. But the 2 examples I put on here, One of them is using Do Ink, which is a green screen app. And this was after, again, the student had done research. This was a class of first graders as well, and they had done some animal research and written their papers. And, you know, again, they went through all of the processes that we do as writers. They wrote on paper, and then the way that they were able to publish it once all that was done was to be able to use the Do Ink green screen app and then make these little videos. So Nikki, do you want to play that Do Ink one?
Mice are the best because they eat bugs for us. Mice are the best because they are cute sometimes. I like mice.
Little smile at the end. He picked a mouse, I think, because it scared his grandma. He was trying to scare his grandma. And then the other one, another app that I really love, Do Ink is, it's not free. I think it's like $2.99, but it's not necessarily an app you would need on every single one of your iPads. You might have it on one or two at a station where students could just set it up and make their videos. ChatterPix is the other one featured on this page. One of my absolute favorites, one of the easiest ones to get started with for teachers or students who are a little bit reluctant because it's so easy to use. Literally, you just take a picture of anything and you draw a little mouth on it and you make it talk. And so it's such a fun way of letting students share a little bit more of their thinking or maybe a little bit more of their story. If there's an art project, like one of my favorite things to do is take a picture of the art project, let the kids put a little mouth on it and have it talk and tell a story. But I mean, they could take a picture of their math paper and, you know, then have it talk and read what they did in math and explain their thinking in math. So super easy to use. If you want to click play on that one just so they can kind of see how that the mouth works.
P says like a penguin.
I guess I was feeling like a real penguin theme as I was putting this together. But again, you see how easy that was. They had made this little craftivity in kindergarten, but by adding that extra piece to it, not only does the teacher know, okay, the kid followed directions and put this together, but they really know this is the letter P. Here are the sounds, that P makes, because they added that extra layer to it. And so I think by using these carefully, not only are they engaging and fun for the students, but just doing those couple of things showed me a little bit more in depth. I know that the student can read his writing and tell me about what he learned about the mice. And I know that this student can identify that letter and tell me the sounds. And then the next screen also talking about to create a couple other sort of favorite apps that I like to use. One of them is PicCollage EDU. There is a free version of PicCollage. And then there's this EDU version. I believe it's $1 or $1.99. I would definitely recommend if you're using it in your classroom to use the EDU version. It unlocks a lot of things that would be in-app purchases in the other version that you don't really want your students accessing. Plus it's a little bit more filtered when you do some searches for stickers and images. But it really is just, I use it like literally for everything. Somebody says, how would you do this? PicCollage, because there's you can put pictures in there. As you can see on this example with Dr. Seuss, you can kind of mask around the picture so that I was able to, without a green screen, kind of cut that little boy. He was able to cut around himself and put him in this background. You can see from here, you can add text, you can add images, you can draw on top of it. And so again, it's just such a simple tool for creating. I love the camera on it. I think that the camera is often the most powerful tool on the iPad, that they can be taking pictures of things that they're learning. So, we're learning measurement in math. They can go around and take a bunch of pictures of what they're measuring and put it into a collage and use that drawing tool and tell me the measurements, or groups of 10, different math problems. I love how easy it is just to get to the camera and then add that, drawing or annotating right on top of it. And they love all the stickers and colors and backgrounds and that kind of thing. And then my other example for Create is the stop motion app. Again, this is a free app. Just let students create stop motion videos. Tons of ideas for how you could use this for different types of storytelling. This idea in this example is one that Desiree Caskey came up with, where they are basically starting with a word family and then building different words of that word family. Again, just a way of demonstrating a skill in a really fun, unique, and creative way. Nikki, if you want to show that one really quickly. Oh, I forgot this one goes to, it was like way back when, before I even had Seesaw, I think. So it has to go here. But you could just kind of see again how they were able to build these different words, you know, different word family words. And it was just kind of a fun way for them to sort of practice word work. We did some with, you know, math problems. Again, you could do stories, use Legos, Play-Doh, all kinds of, you know, fun ideas, but they really just kind of enjoy. It's a great collaborative project too. I usually have them working at least in pairs on this. So one of them is like the mover and one of them is the camera person, and they really have to work together and communicate. Like you can see how sometimes little hands and fingers and stuff get shown in there. And so they really do have to work together to make this, you know, come together how they want it to. So it's great for collaboration as well.
Did I talk about documents?
I don't remember. March was super long ago.
It was. I think it's your example, but I can talk about these things too.
Okay. I'm like, I feel like I've been talking a long time. It's got to be your turn.
Yeah, I'll take it. So documenting is my favorite thing to do. And I always say, you know, in kindergarten and first grade classrooms especially, the learning does not happen on paper. The learning happens with Play-Doh and blocks and math manipulatives and in small group sessions. And so it is impossible to take those experiences and send them home so mom and dad could see them or post them on a bulletin board. Now that we have these digital tools and they're making them more and more kid friendly, we can now document all the good stuff that happens in the classroom. And that can be the stuff that we use to communicate how kids are doing when we talk to parents and when we send home progress reports, because we can use tools like Flipgrid. This one with the green circle and the plus sign has only been around for a few years now, but gosh, it's grown and just blown up in popularity because it is a tool that allows kids to use everything from a phone to an iPad to record a quick video of themselves responding to some kind of a prompt. My favorite example of how this was used during the distance and learning time was a third grade teacher in Three Forks made one of herself, giving the prompt, tell me something that you have made or learned or done during distance learning time that you wouldn't have done normally. You know, what has been the high points of this? So there's been low points, but what's the high point? And then each kid had to respond with their own little video to that prompt. And one little boy, you watch it for a minute and a half, he comes on, he goes, well, one thing that I did was I started a business. Yep, I've got chickens and I'm selling eggs. And he you know, detailed his egg business on Flipgrid. And it was, for her, it was this meaningful thing because, I mean, they probably would have had that conversation in person had he come to school. But it was an opportunity for her to get that response, for them to have an asynchronous conversation. And the best part was his peers got to see that video. And the way the grid is set up, the peers can leave a video comment to the videos. So they can be having these asynchronous conversations using Flipgrid. It's free. It works across all platforms. Kids as young as kindergarten can do it. If they're not comfortable having their face showing, which we see more in middle and high school, there is the option to pixelate your face or put a sticker over your face or annotate over your face. They can also, you know, bring the camera down so that you're talking, but you're just looking at something else. So there's a lot of creative ways to use Flipgrid to document learning, and a lot of exciting opportunities for collaboration outside of your classroom as well. The other tool on here is Padlet, which if you were in my session this morning, we used that real quick to gather some, what are the technology tools that you're all using, and that's a digital bulletin board. And it's an open link. You post things up there. You can put discussion questions. You can use it to generate ideas and brainstorm. A cool example I saw was a teacher had kids do oral presentations, and he set up a Padlet for each kid. And while the kid was giving their presentation, his classmates were giving him feedback on a Padlet. And so when that kid went to sit down, they got to pull up their Padlet and see all the feedback that their classmates had given them in that digital space. So kind of a cool way to use Padlet. Young kids can use Padlet because they can also insert images and video. There's also, I think there's an annotation tool, right? I can't remember. They can draw things in there as well. So there's a lot of options. The nice thing about Padlet is it also has what they call a profanity filter. And if you turn that on, it will put like a little emoji over words that they pick up that aren't appropriate. Probably more necessary at the middle school level, but still a fun tool to have. And then the last one is Seesaw, which I talked about a ton this morning as well. Seesaw is a student portfolio tool, but it has a lot of the same functions as a learning management system in that we can post assignments and share activities. We can communicate with parents. Kids can take pictures of things. They can work on documents. They can photograph their work. My favorite thing to do is that tower that they built in the classroom that they would not take down. Take a picture of it, put it on Seesaw. Now we can put the blocks away and we've documented that that tower exists. Traci, what is this example? I can't remember it. Is this a Seesaw example?
I believe it's Flipgrid.
Is this a Flipgrid example? Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll bring up what it looks like here.
What I learned about pushes and pulls is that pushes and pulls make things easier. Like if you tie a rope around something, and that makes you could like pull it up, and that would make it easier to pull something up. And if it was really heavy, you could ask friends to help on the bottom, and you could pull the rope on the top. And that's what I learned about pushes and pulls.
Beautiful bookended summary of her learning there.
Well, and I love these examples too. I think something that people ask us all the time is like, how do you record? I mean, you can clearly tell there was background noise in that response. Same with one of the other ones that we had listened to. It's not perfect, right? It's not like she's in a recording studio or anything, but I can still hear her clearly. She did an excellent job of explaining that, and it still opened up that little window to me. Again, I might not have gotten as much from her if I'd asked her to write that on a piece of paper. Some kids are reluctant to write that much. And so by her being able to express it through Flipgrid, she could tell me all that. And I also don't have the time necessarily to go to every, one of my students in my classroom and give them that time to share with me. And so I just love how these tools give that opportunity. But I did think it was, as I was listening, I'm like, oh, I hear that background noise. And I think it's okay. There's always going to be that little din back there. People try all different kinds of things, like maybe they have little microphones or those little phone things you could plug in. I mean, there's things you can do to reduce that. But I think the benefit of being able to hear that outweighs, a little bit of that kind of background noise and din in the back there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so sharing, we bring up Seesaw again because it's sort of the Swiss Army knife, really. It does everything. But giving kids an authentic audience for their digital things. The cool thing is that we can create something digitally and post it in a place like Seesaw or Kid Blog, and Grandma in Minnesota can see it, and Grandma and Grandpa in Australia can see it, as I had one family in my classroom. And it's an opportunity to just spread the love all over and not just live on the wall in your classroom. Seesaw, this little GIF here is going through just what the feed of Seesaw looks like. You can see what the kid might see and what the parent might see, and what anybody who's attached to the Seesaw class can see. You can see that it's not just student work, it's also a place for announcements to be shared. And remember, there's picture day tomorrow. Remember, we've got the school fundraiser coming. So if you're already making a newsletter, Seesaw can be your newsletter. If you're already sending home a whole bunch of emails about things that are coming up, Seesaw can help you with that. It's that one-stop shop for things. Kid Blog is there. Traci and I both used Kid Blog way back when, before there was Seesaw, to have a class blog. And it was a great landing place for our kids to post their work. And we had our kids look at each other's blogs and leave each other comments. We both read a series of books by the same author, and then the kids blogged about what they liked about the books and what they noticed, and then responded to those posts. So it was a really cool way for us to collaborate from different cities in the same state. Class Dojo started as a behavior management tool and has grown into a portfolio and communication tool as well. So it's a way to help reinforce those positive behaviors, or to get some of those negative behaviors addressed. Also a way to share things with parents using an instant messaging app. You can do the same kind of thing by sending announcements and things that are happening in school with Dojo. And then they just added the portfolio tool, which I will admit I don't know much about the Dojo portfolio. I was told it was kind of inconvenient to log into from somebody, but I don't know much about that. Traci, did you want to say anything else about these ones?
You know, I just thought I'd touch really quickly, because a question I'm getting a lot about this share piece right now is about Google Classroom. We have a lot of teachers maybe who are using Google Classroom, wondering how that works with some of these other tools, or why you would use it with these other tools. And I really feel like it's because of this sharing piece here. You know, as we're looking at going back to school in the fall, I feel like we all know we need a digital platform. We need some place, you know, where we're putting assignments and communicating and that kind of thing. And it feels like it's falling between like Google Classroom, Seesaw, you know, are they the same? Why would I use one or the other? And Google Classroom to me is a fantastic place to organize and kind of manage those assignments that you're giving your students. But the sharing piece there, you know, when Nikki was talking about being able to share with families and people, you know, even grandma, you know, across the country or whatever, that's not something that Google Classroom allows you to do right now. And so I think what's really powerful about that is having students, you know, still use that to manage your classes and give assignments, but then to still give them somewhere for that portfolio. So if it's Seesaw, they can then be posting those completed pieces of work to Seesaw, where their classmates and their family can see them. And then again, that kind of communication piece in there, that tool with parents, I think is really also very powerful. So that was all I was thinking of as Nikki was talking, because I know that that's something that's coming up a lot lately, at least in our district, is kind of how those work together. And I do think it's that sharing piece that really is a huge difference between those two tools. I also want to apologize because that GIF was not nearly as obnoxious when you were like live and not having to stare at it like a strobe light on your screen the whole time. Here I went GIF happy again. I just can't get enough. Maybe we can even just go to the website, but this last slide here just kind of, again, is the link to that website that we put together. Again, we created it for an in-person session at MCCE. So of course, you know, don't pay attention to the agenda up there. We weren't able to provide you with snacks today that's on the agenda, but the slides here are embedded on the first page, and so if you're wanting to look through the slides, see any of those examples again, they're there. And then that tab up at the top that says apps, this is the piece that we thought would be most useful for you to still have access to today. So it really just kind of highlights the apps that we shared today, a couple other favorites I think snuck their way in there because like we said, we had a hard time really narrowing it down to our absolute favorites. So you can click on all of those apps from there. And then PBS really does have just an amazing collection of learning tools for teachers and families and students. So there are some great things that Nikki put on here, you know, talking about some of the free apps available and kind of, you know, what the topics are if you're looking for anything in particular. And then she's put some pages in there for lots of different of the apps and websites and that sort of thing. You'll have to go through and give yourself access.
Yeah, I don't have access to these things.
But just kind of highlighting a lot of those different PBS kids like apps and learning tools and things like that. She had mentioned the PBS Learning Media site a little bit earlier when she was talking about Xavier Riddle. If that's not a site that you have checked out, I would definitely recommend going to that website. I know the first time I went there, I really had no idea how many resources were available to us for free. And again, it links to some media, it links to some online games, there's tons of printables, so lots of different types of things. It's not all just, you know, click and have your kids sit and play a game or whatever, or watch a show. It really pairs everything together. So if they watch the show, then there's a follow-up to it with this activity. So a really great place to look for resources.
And I think this is the Wakelet, right? The click to
Yep.
the
Yeah.
we were talking about. So, and then of course we have the bios for Traci and I. That's how you can get a hold of us if you have questions. We're both very active on Twitter. Traci more so than me these days. I'm falling down on the Twitter. But there's also a link to the PBS Learning Media website on that bio page as well. I think that's all of our slides and all of our resources. And so we have lots of time if you have questions or things that you wanted to ask us about certain apps or anything that you wondered about.
And we'd love to hear if you use any of these tools, you know, examples, or if there are some that we didn't touch on that you use often that you want to share, please share.
I think we did a good job covering it.
They're speechless because it was so amazing.
Nothing left to say.
I guess we should remind everyone that there are webinars being offered every Monday through, I believe, August 24th through MCCE. So I'll put a link to that website here in the chat box. But definitely check those out. They're all, sorry, I can't talk and do something at once. But they're all free 1-hour webinars. You can either attend them live or view recordings. But MCCE is really just hoping, you know, to be able to just provide some support and resources for teachers, you know, across the state and across the country, whoever happens to land here. And so we hope that you'll find these really, really useful to you as you endeavor into next year, whatever that may bring. But if you do have questions, we'll hang out for a couple more minutes. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody.